Hi everyone, welcome back to the Camp Chronicles. Today's episode, we are going to be talking about the cold, hard truths of working at a summer camp. Now, these are some of the topics that I feel like can sometimes be brushed over. You know, people always talk about the fun, happy, clappy side of camp, and it is fun and happy, but there are also like some times where you may struggle or some things that you might find a little bit harder. So we thought we'd start off the episode talking about food and trying to adjust to the camp food, because I don't know about you, Summer, but I found it a big adjustment, shall we say.
Yeah, it was a big adjustment for sure. I think what you have to remember is you go into camp and it's a little bit like school. They're catering for so many people, it's on such a big scale. So I actually found that during orientation, like my first summer, I was like, wow, this food's like really nice. Like, I'm gonna love this. I'm gonna be absolutely fine. I have nothing to worry about. And then the kids got there, and it kind of started to feel like it wasn't as good as what I thought it was, and it gets repetitive. Like, you're eating the same meals every week.
Mhm.
So I struggled with that. And also, I think I just struggle with a lot of the food in America because I feel like it's meat on the bone. And I am a big like hater on meat on the bone. But you know, if you're not getting your protein,
Yeah.
your energy dips, and I found that to be a big factor of adjusting to the food.
I think everybody probably goes through the same thing. Like even if the food is nice, which I like for the most part do enjoy the food at my camp. There's some meals that I have where I'm a bit like, oh, like when we'll have grilled cheese, it's literally just like a slice of American cheese in a sandwich. And like it's just not the same as having like a cheese toastie at home. So some meals I'm kind of like, but they're not like horrible. But then like you're saying, it's just like adjusting and your body does need to adjust. Like for example, you might eat like an Indian takeaway one night and the food's not necessarily bad, but sometimes you can just feel it in your tummy. It's exactly the same when you get to camp. Like just so if you do have that experience, usually it's like the first few days and then it'll kind of pass. I know during orientation, I think it was our first summer, they made chicken teriyaki and everyone was ill. I don't know what it was, but there was a lot of people with upset tummies after eating the chicken teriyaki. And then some people were scared to eat it again when they actually made it properly when the kids were there. But then the second time around, it was absolutely fine. So I think it's just kind of that adjusting to the food, isn't it?
I think it's so funny that you mentioned about that one meal. My first summer, they actually made
Mhm.
us a Sunday's dinner. They thought it would be really nice and it would make us feel right at home.
Mm.
Except after an hour and a half or so, we were all sat round the campfire on Lower Girls
Mm.
Camp, like chatting away, and my stomach was in pieces. I was in so much pain. And like full disclaimer, if we're gonna get real with the viewers,
Yeah.
it can get quite nerve wracking, like going to the toilet and stuff like that at camp
Pooping in
because
front
you
of people in
become
the cabin.
it's like all brand new people that you've never met before. And our first summer, for the first 2 nights of orientation, they put us in the lodge, which is where the teens and CITs live,
Hmm.
and everybody was in the lodge. And
Oh.
obviously, if you think about it, camp hasn't really been used for, 10 months. So the plumbing isn't the greatest. So honestly, the stress that a lot of us went through, and yeah, it's safe to say that if they were to make a Sunday's dinner for us again, it's a nice gesture, but I wouldn't eat it.
Do you know that's also kind of a hard truth is if you're not a very open person about bowel movements, sickness, kind of like gross things, camp will just desensitize you to all of that. So if you're not kind of okay with all that right now, before going to camp, wait until you come back. You're going to be a different person because, like you were saying, you're in cabins. There's a lot of people in the cabins. You need to go to the toilet. It can't be avoided. And also like the kids are very, very open with stuff like that. Like the girls are really open with like, I haven't pooped for like 4 days. I'm stressing. Oh my God, I've just finally pooped. This is amazing. They're starting their period. They're helping each other like with tampons and things like that. You just learn to desensitize too. That's just a total side off topic thing, but that's just reminded me as well.
So my probably go-to meal when I'm at camp is on a morning I'll have granola and yogurt. They
Mm.
do like the best granola at camp. I don't know what's in it,
Sugary,
but
really
it's
sugary.
so good. And that's obviously a source of fibre to help ladies and gentlemen, you know what I'm saying. So I always have granola and yogurt on the morning, and then for my lunch and for my dinner, we call it
Mhm.
tea, but for my dinner,
Mhm.
I have rice usually, so white rice, cucumber, peppers, and tomatoes
It's a staple everyday meal.
for lunch and for dinner. And it's not because the food's not nice. It's just
Mm.
because I know my stomach struggles with the food
Mhm.
and I don't like meat on the bone. It's more so me being a fussy eater than the meals not being nice.
Yeah, you kind of find your safe foods, don't you? You know what meals you can eat and what you can't eat, what'll settle okay and what'll make your tummy hurt. So you just gotta try everything realistically. Like the food genuinely isn't like awful, like it's not that bad. And some of it I'm actually like always really excited for. Like we do Greek night, or they did Greek night last year, and they made like, I can't remember how you say it, gyros, however you say it, made them and like just little bits like that, and we had feta cheese. Save food for me is always the egg salad. It's just like egg mayo. So if there's nothing else that I want to eat, I'll just get a plate full of egg mayo and chips, basically. Yeah, diet at camp will be different to your diet at home, definitely.
And your camp will want you to reach out to them and let them know prior if you do have any dietary
Mm.
requirements or there is anything that they can help you with. I know my camp, we have a pasta bar, we have a salad bar, you have a vegetarian option, and then you've got the food that's on the table. But if you let them know prior to obviously camp that you have, say, like an intolerance, they'll make sure that they can cater for you.
Yeah, ours is exactly the same. So there will always be something for everyone. But moving away from food now, we'll talk about the fact that, like I said at the beginning, camp's not always sunshine and rainbows. Like you will have down days at camp, and I feel like a lot of people do talk about it, but you have to kind of delve onto the depths of people's social media channels to actually see where they talk about it. Because for the most part, like TikTok and Instagram and stuff, and like different agencies are always posting all the like fun upbeat content, but down days are inevitable, and the like different things will impact that, like your own hormones. I don't know, things could be going on at home. Some days you'll wake up and you just think, I can't be bothered to deal with the kids drama today. Or I don't know, you might be stuck in a bunk because there's been a massive storm and you're not allowed to leave because it's thunder and lightning and a rainstorm outside. So the weather heavily impacts things as well, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does. And like you said, with the sunshine and rainbows thing, is you are going to have good days and you are going to have down days. And I don't think anybody on camp, even the directors of your camp, will go every single day being happy and everything goes right. And it goes for, sometimes I've had days where I've done something or I've made a mistake and I really bog down in like the
Mhm.
small things really and I make them so heightened because I feel like it's the biggest mistake in the world. But actually, if you just talk it out with your core counsellors, you talk it out with leadership staff and just say, like, this is how I'm feeling, there'll always be somebody there to support you and
Mhm.
make sure that you're feeling on top form if you
Yeah.
aren't. And then with the weather thing, I remember in 2023 summer, I don't know if it was the same for you because obviously we are quite close.
Yeah.
The weather was atrocious. It
Hmm.
was like every day it would rain, it was dark skies, and you could just feel the mood difference around everybody. Like when you would have that one odd sunny morning and
Hmm.
everyone was really happy, and then it would rain on the afternoon and then everyone was miserable again. It is like you're a product of your environment, and when it's dark and gloomy it almost like makes you feel dark and gloomy as well. It's a little bit like when you go from being in the summer to being in the winter.
Hmm.
It has a massive impact on how you feel.
It does. And the thing about like the weather at camp though is like stuff won't necessarily just stop because of rain. Like the rain really isn't dangerous. Obviously like high ropes courses and things like that, like trapeze probably isn't going to continue in the rain. But if for the like I remember there was one day I was in arts and crafts and it started absolutely hoying it down. Like it was so bad. And there was lacrosse on like the field opposite art and crafts, and everyone, like the kids were having so much fun. They were just like running around, and like props to the counsellors and the CITs that were helping at lacrosse, because they continued playing through the rain. The kids looked like they were having a whale of a time. The kids found it hilarious, and they were just having so much fun. So yes, the weather can put a dampener, see what I did there with the rain, quite literally, on things, but it's up to you to try and flip it around, or like, rather than viewing it as such a negative thing, try and take that positive and think, how often do you get to just run around in a field in the rain? Like, it's not very often. The only time really you shouldn't be doing that is obviously if there's lightning. That's when it's dangerous, and you should be inside in a grounded facility. But if it's just rain, then it's fine.
I think a good thing to go into the summer is with ideas for like rainy day schedule sessions. So, for
Mhm.
example, if you know in the afternoon that there's like weather forecasted to be a storm and it's going to be lightning, and you know you're more than likely going to be indoors,
Mhm.
have a think of some things that you could do with the kids all together or in groups. Speak to your co-counselors, because is if as long as you keep them kids occupied and doing something, the less likely like friendship fallouts are going to happen or arguments are going to
Mhm.
happen. So if you go into the summer thinking of things that you know you would enjoy doing indoors, camp will try and facilitate it if they can. So definitely have ideas.
Yeah, it does really like make a difference though, doesn't it? Because I assume if you having the younger ones, the kids can't keep themselves entertained for as long. I mean, even to be fair, having the older ones, they can't always keep themselves totally entertained. But there was one day when there'd been a storm and there was like total power outage, like the water had been cut off. It was still like lightning, so everybody was in the bunks. It was getting dark. We didn't have electricity in the bunks, so there was no light. And it's days like that when you're thinking, oh my god, when is this ever going to end? There's no light, there's quite literally no light at the end of the tunnel. But if you can try and just like think of games or just like stupid little things to try and keep the kids entertained, it does make it a lot easier, doesn't it?
And I think it's a great way, like if this is to happen at the start of the summer and even towards any part of the summer, it's a
Mm-hmm.
great way to like sit down with, you know, a couple of kids and like really get to know them. And yet, if they're sat playing a card game, ask if you can join in or join in the next round and
Mm-hmm.
sit with your kids and chill. Don't just sit on your bed with your co-counselors, which I have been guilty of doing before, like just watching the kids play. Obviously, you can do that, but it's a great way, you know, to make connections with the kids and sit with them and play the likes of jacks or the card games or anything like that that the kids enjoy doing, join in
Mm-hmm.
with them.
Yeah, definitely agree with everything there. And it can be, like you were saying, it can be hard sometimes to kind of like make those bonds with the kids. Like it can feel like almost intimidating at first. Again, I don't know if you found this because you had the younger ones, but having the older ones, because they've been at camp for so long and they all know each other so well, like they're not intimidating. But like it was intimidating to think like, I want to get to know these kids. They probably don't really care about getting to know me yet, but I'm gonna have to try and like force my way in to speak to them at some point. Whereas like the days where you sat in the bunk and they're forced to speak to you, that's an easy way to do it.
No, I totally agree with what you're saying there. With the younger ones, I think naturally, like at the start of camp, which is a hard truth, really, is that
Mm.
them kids are gonna go towards the JCs who they know and have known previous years compared to you, who's a brand new counsellor, or they're gonna seek out their returners. But honestly, I think as a first time counsellor, you get in your head about it so much when you first see that, and then you
Mhm.
automatically put yourself on the back burner when all you have got to do is put yourself out there and you
Mhm.
know just naturally go over to a kid and start a conversation with them. Like, don't, because you've had one failed conversation, then think the rest of the conversations are going to fail, because that's not the case at all. It is the cold hard truth that you're more in your head about it than you actually need to be.
Agreed, definitely.
So obviously we mentioned just there about friendship fallouts due to weather, but no matter what's going on, you know, there might be the odd falling out between the girls, the campers, but you know, you've got to remember that everybody's living together and everybody's on top of each other a lot, so it does naturally happen. But honestly, it's usually over like the most minor things, especially having the younger kids. It's over the likes of, you know, somebody's decided that they're going to do a bunk spa, but then there's not enough jobs for everybody, and then one person doesn't want to share their jobs. Like, it's as petty and as small as that, but to
Mhm.
these kids it feels like the most like biggest thing that's ever happened to them. But all you've got
Mhm.
to do is kind of sit down with the kids and, you know, talk things through with them. And also, I think as the girls are getting older, what I'm doing with my campers is kind of letting them figure things out for themselves and
Mhm.
letting them have their space apart and then letting them come together, because that's why they go to camp, to learn these life skills. And in the real world, you know, for 10 months, I'm not going to be there to mediate every single falling out that they've had with each other.
Mhm.
So I think it's also important to kind of like let them figure things out themselves, unless obviously you do need to intervene with it. But
Mhm.
it's true, it happens. When you were their age, you probably had similar fallings out. And kind of the same thing goes for counsellors as well. You know,
Mhm.
somebody might not be pulling the weight as much, and you haven't had that conversation with them where, you know, they're not feeling great, but actually, you know, in the heat of things, you could get really annoyed, but then half an hour later, you'll probably like look at each other and start laughing, and you'll be like, "I'm so sorry. That was like literally the most pointless like argument that we've had." And it
Mhm.
doesn't usually turn into big arguments, but like it's the most pointless petty conversation we've just had, and actually like your best friends like literally 25 minutes later.
Yeah, like you were saying with the kids, like 9 times out of 10, it is like petty little things. I have found that being with the older girls, though, it's almost harder because they are older and they're going to be more set in their own ways. And if they decide, well, I don't want to be friends with this person anymore, you can't just persuade them to be friends with them because they could have done something which is bigger than just like not giving them a job in a spa. They could have went and, I don't know, kissed their boyfriend or something like that. This is not speaking from experience, but like, do you know what I mean? It's like slightly bigger things that they could have done. Um, or they could have, I don't know, revealed their friend's like deepest, darkest secret. And some things like that are hard to kind of forgive and like come back from, I found, as they get older. But then it's equally just as hard if they then go, well, I'm done with them. Like, I don't want to be their friend anymore, because then it creates tension in the bunk for everyone, like people having to pick sides and stuff. So it can be really hard to deal with those situations. Like you said, you won't be there to mediate every single conversation with them for the rest of their life. So definitely try and mediate some, but they also do need to like take lead on it themselves and actually express how they are feeling. And the same with staff as well. Like you might have like, I don't know, just an outburst. You might have just been bottling something up for so long and you might have an outburst and be like, you never get in the pool. I'm always the one that has to get in the pool. It's not fair. Or something like that. And it's just because you've been bottling it up a little bit too long. So just like if you have any grievances, I don't know what the right word really is to use, like just like speak with your cause as soon as you can. And also friendship fallout, I would say not necessarily fallout, but there also will be people at camp that you just don't get along with. Like I would say like I'm pretty easygoing and I will get along with everybody, but there's people that you naturally are closer to, or there's people that sometimes they might do things and you think, I don't agree with that. Like you're probably not going to be my closest friend, but because we'll work together, it's fine. We'll just get on with it. Um, Obviously, not everyone is like that. So sometimes people do really butt heads. Have you had many explosive staff arguments at camp, or have yours been all right? Have you noticed any?
Not that I can think of, just like what you spoke about there, where somebody wouldn't get in the pool all the time. Like, I find that the JCs never want to get in the lake. Like,
True.
that's something that I have found. And sometimes it can be annoying when you're the only person that keeps going in all the time.
Hmm.
But I don't really think I've ever seen like an explosive friendship fallout at camp, because to
Hmm.
be honest, the people that go to camp, you're all kind of similar, but
Yeah.
in some ways you're not. And that's when obviously, you know, disagreements happen. But I don't really feel like it's the place where you do like have a screaming argument. Have you seen that?
I haven't, no, to be fair. Not that I can think of. I mean, like, there will be obviously like bickering between friendship groups, or someone will say something, or someone will do something, or I don't know, this guy might get with this girl on a night off, and then the next week he'll get with a different girl, and then there'll be like resentment or something. But there's never really been any sort of like screaming matches that I can recall. It's always just like little bits kind of here and there, I feel like. Um, But yeah, like you're saying, everybody's like similar. Like I think that's why camp's so great, because everybody should be there for the same reasons. So everybody is like, although so different, has similar sort of motives to be there. So it is easy to get along with everyone for the most part.
I think probably is the biggest drama I've ever seen is kind of to the people that it happened with, it didn't feel like drama to them.
Hmm.
But I feel like a lot of people at camp, you live through everybody else's lives and what goes on, and
Hmm.
it's a little bit like Love Island. Rumours get spread around so easily about people. But
Hmm.
like relationship drama for me has been like something that I love sitting back and watching while I'm at camp. And this stuff doesn't really go on when you're actually on camp itself. You know,
Hmm.
the whispers will go on while you're on camp, but like arguments and stuff like that never happen, and they never should happen on camp because the kids pick up on everything. And if you think the kids aren't listening, they are
Yeah.
most definitely listening to what you're talking about. But like I know on like night off and stuff, people who've been in like 3, 4, 5 year relationships, nobody's known that they've actually split up like during the period of camp time. And then like one day, like say Bob kisses Emma, but Bob has been in a 4 year relationship with Jane, and everybody's like jaw
Oh.
dropping, hit to the floor, like this is crazy drama. And then it
Mhm.
comes out that like they split up a week ago, and then for the rest of the summer, Bob's getting with Rachel now for the rest of the time, and then Bob's ex-girlfriend Leah is now seeing. I'm thinking of every name that I don't know who's went to camp. Now
There's so many
Leah's,
names. You need to
yeah,
try and think of something rogue.
yeah. Now no, we'll go. Leah's getting with Dante now, and then you just like wait. They came in like a 5 year relationship. Like what's gone on in the period of time? But like that's the truth behind like rumor mills and stuff like that. It's usually
Mm.
like who's getting with who, or who's cheated on who, or who's
Hmm.
broken up with who and then got with who. It's kind of like that's.
It's hard to avoid though. Like cold hard truth, there will be relationship drama, and it's hard to avoid to an extent. I mean, like people come to camp in relationships either with people at camp, or they might come to camp in relationships with people that are back home, and like it is hard to obviously like it's not hard to contact home. It's easy to pick up your phone and contact home, but maybe if your other half is at home and they've never been to camp before, and they genuinely just don't understand how you can't just pick up your phone and call them, or to be texting them all the time. Like I can imagine that would make it really hard. So if people, I think, are already in a iffy sort of relationship before they come to camp, like people will break up like at camp. Like it does happen. Or on the flip side, you know what I mean? Like I've got multiple friends who have been to camp multiple summers and have been with their boyfriends like the whole time, and they're strong as ever and they're totally fine. It honestly just depends on the type of person you are. Um and like cheating as well. Cheating will happen, like, and it's really sad to see. But then there might be this girl's getting with this boy, and everyone's like, but she has a boyfriend, like it's all over her Instagram and stuff like that. And then but then realistically you don't know, like maybe they have broken up. It's just all like rumors, like you were saying. It's really hard to see, to know what the actual truth is, but try not get absorbed and sucked into it, especially if it's not your drama.
I think as well though, like camp brings out the best side of people,
Hmm.
and I've known people that have went to camp in relationships. They've met somebody at camp, they've broken up with their significant other back home,
Hmm.
and they've got with this person, and now they're 4 years on in their relationship, and they're so happy with the person they met at camp because this is like somebody that they have so much similarity with. They have the same
Hmm.
values, the same goals, and you know that might be the case as well. So I think the big thing is even though you've got your own morals and values, like the truth of it is it's not your life, and you're
Yeah.
not living theirs, and you don't really know what's truly going on in their mind. So kind of this is the thing about camp is the rumor mill, but you've also got to consider other people's feelings as well.
Obviously, talking about like that was mainly about like staff relationships and stuff. What I find really cute sometimes is, you know, on visiting day, like some of my girls and seeing them like reunite with like their boyfriends and stuff, and they'll all come like running in, and obviously they're reuniting with their family as well. um, but it's so cute like seeing them reunite with like their boyfriends who they've been like telling you so much about, and like how much they love them and all this stuff. Like it's really cute to see that. But visiting day in itself is a whole thing, especially as an international staff member. Like it's obviously, I feel like they do mention beforehand that, you know, it will be hard, and like they'll always say to like domestic staff, like look out for your international staff member codes, because a lot of domestic staff will have siblings that are still at camp, or that it's like not too far for their parents to come. Like they'll be able to see family, or they're not very far from home. Like they can go home on days off and stuff like that. Whereas as international staff, like that doesn't happen. And like I would say generally at camp, like I've never really got that homesick, which is a whole other topic we'll discuss in a minute. But on visiting day, it does hit you, doesn't it?
It's a different level because, you know, I remember my first summer, I like didn't feel homesickness at all. And
Mhm.
then I watched these parents run down the bank and reunite with the kids, and like the kids were screaming, crying, the parents screaming,
Mhm.
crying, and it was just like it was like a scene out of a movie. And then like it hit me like my parents weren't gonna run down and like I wasn't gonna jump into their arms, and
Mhm.
it's not necessarily something we would do anyways in the real world, but it
Mhm.
makes you like miss and crave that love and attention from your family on visiting day. And
Mhm.
I can guarantee you'll be stood with all of your co-counselors, your arms around each other, crying, watching it because you're happy for the kids. But then
Mhm.
also deep down, you kind of like long for your parents to run down and see you.
Mhm. It's a very unstructured day as well. I don't know how structured it is for you at Tyler Hill, but at Echo it is very unstructured. In terms of some of the kids will be leaving camp with their parents, they can go to Middletown Mall, they can go get food, they can go all these different places. Some parents will come and they'll like stay on camp, and they'll bring these crazy amounts of food and this massive spread and picnics and everything. So like your kids are kind of here, there, and everywhere. So unless you've been assigned like a specific role, it can make you feel like, oh, I've always felt like quite like a loose part. Like I just don't really know what to do or where to go. I mean, first summer we didn't have visiting day because it was COVID kind of still, so we didn't actually do a visiting day. Second summer was the first visiting day I experienced, and I remember I can't even remember what my role was. I think I was meant to be on parking duties, but then all the other counsellors in my like 10th grade bunks had been assigned other roles, and I was like, the kids are gonna have no one. So they were like, just stay with the kids and then just float. So I was like, fine. Oh, that'll be fun. I can just float around. And then I was got to the floating around, and I was like, I just feel like a spare part. I don't know where to go, what to do. Like half of my kids are off camp. Most of them, like they're older, they don't really want to introduce you to their parents that much. Then don't get me wrong, every parent that I spoke to, I loved, and they were all so nice. Like,
Do you know,
did parents really invested with you?
honestly, not really. There was only one parent that I remember that was like really invested in having a conversation. But then
Mm-hmm.
on the flip side of things, we have to remember that this parent hasn't seen their kid for so many weeks. So
Mm-hmm.
like that's their sole priority. But the
Mm-hmm.
way visiting day works for us is the kids used to go off camp
Mm-hmm.
pre-COVID, but now everybody stays on and we do like a barbecue. We do like a massive dessert spread at the dining hall, and I'm talking like the best dessert you've ever eaten, like the nicest fruit, like all of that. It's
Mm-hmm.
amazing, and we do pull out all the stops in terms of catering wise for visiting day. But all the kids stay on camp still, and they'll set up on all of the lawns around camp, and like you'll look out the window at 10:31, it's empty. 10:35, there's a stampede of
Yeah.
parents running, and by 10:45, everybody's sat with like the picnic blankets out, the
Mm-hmm.
tents out. It's like, you know, when you've been to the tailgating and you see all of the
Yeah.
tents. That's what
Uh-huh.
it's like all over camp. And then the kids kind of can go to different activities. So they'll book in to play tennis between 12 and 1, or they'll book to go into the boating lake between like 2 and 3. Like, that's how it'll work, and they're able to
Mm-hmm.
go around and do all of the activities. So it's quite structured in a sense. And then for the staff members, we all have to be there the first hour at the bunks,
Mhm.
and making sure like the parents are okay, making like helping them bring the bags in and things like that, having conversations with them. And then after that you'll be have on and off periods, so if two of you will stay on like between 10 and 11, and then say 11 to 12 they'll go off and get their food, and then the people that have been off would come back to the bunk. So that's kind of how that works. But I think it's probably across the board. Like the parents' sole focus is like having conversations with the kids, and they
Mhm.
don't really like stand and have much of a conversation with you. Like they'll say hello, they'll introduce themselves, but that'll kind of be it.
Mhm.
Um, but the parents really get to see like your hard work towards the end of visiting day when the kids are like visibly upset leaving their parents. I
Mhm.
think this is probably a bigger thing for younger children, but the kids get very, very upset saying
Mhm.
goodbye, and it's like going back to the bus stop when they're saying goodbye then.
Mhm.
But the difference is they don't have the excitement of going to camp because they're already there and the parents are leaving. And the
Mhm.
parents are really appreciative of your work. But the
Mhm.
hard truth is sometimes it won't feel like that from some parents because you won't have much of a conversation with them. But don't get bogged down in that. It is literally
Mhm.
just because they haven't seen their kids for so long and their kids are their main focus.
Yeah, it is like it's funny as well when you see them like all come in and like they've brought like loads of gifts or stuff like that. I mean, I know you're saying like your kids can't go off camp, but my kids, the ones that can go off and go to the mall, they'll go to the mall, they'll go to Target and they'll come back and the honestly, my favorite part is just them doing like their hauls for me. I'll be like, right, I need a haul right now. Show me everything that you've got, and they've got like just like ridiculous amounts of snacks, and like obviously you're not allowed to have snacks in the bunk. Um, but they're just all like because my like the oldest girls they go on trip pretty much straight after visiting day. Like they'll have gone to the mall and they'll have like bought new clothes for the trips and stuff like that. So I'm like, give me a haul now. So that does cheer up my visiting day at the end because even if I've been a bit sad and lost during the day, I love a haul. So it really perks me up at the end of the day.
Yeah, and at the end of visiting day for my camp, we do this massive water fight, and they bring a water truck in. They have like a
Mm.
water truck. They bring a fire truck in, and they have this big hose, and we have like water guns that they all get from the parents on visiting day. And if they don't get
Mhm.
them, we've got a pile from the previous year, and we just have this massive water fight for like an hour afterwards, and like it's like visiting day never happened. They go back to the bunk, they want to eat all of their baked by Melissa cakes,
Mhm.
and they want to eat all of the chips as they call it. They
Mm.
want to eat all of their crisps that they've got, and they suddenly like want to eat this mountain of food that they haven't been able to have, and it's
Mhm.
going in 2 days, so they have to get through the whole thing, and you can guarantee by the end of visiting day you get, I've got a bad tummy, I don't feel very well, I feel sick,
Mhm.
and that's what you get. The hard truth is you're dealing more at the end of the night with them having a bad stomach from all of
Mhm.
the food that they've ate all day long.
And honestly, I feel like I sometimes have a bad tummy from eating all the food as well, or like the stuff that they're offering me. But another kind of like hard truth is obviously we're talking about how hard the kids find it leaving their parents when they've still got to stay at camp for a bit longer. But like the actual final day, like how hard it is to leave everyone and how genuinely sad everybody is. Look around sometimes on the last night and it's not a dry eye in the house. And like some people obviously are criers, some people aren't, but like most people are sitting around you crying. And even if you're not crying, you'll look around and see someone like one of your friends cry and then it just like sets you off. Like Harris, who like was one of the boys counselors, the same grade as me for 2 years. His sister was actually in my cabin my first summer. Every time he cries, it sets me off. He's such like every time without fail, like on like the last few nights, and oh, he's just like the most loveliest person ever. But like every time he cries, I'd be gone. I'm like, right, I'm crying now as well.
It's the people that say they won't cry as well that you find are
Mhm.
absolutely sobbing on that night or the next day you're getting the kids ready to get onto the bus.
Mhm.
Um, my first 2 summers, I cried non-stop. Like, I literally, like, cried from the moment I woke up. So we have Florida campers, and the Florida campers usually
Yeah.
leave, like, at, like, 4:30 in the morning. So you're absolutely exhausted because your kids want to stay awake. And, like, even though I have some young kids, they stay awake till 2, 3 o'clock in the morning. And then
Mhm.
the campers that are meant to get on that bus to leave, by the time you wake up, like, I'm sobbing
Yeah.
when one of my campers leaves, and it's the Florida camper. And then it just doesn't stop from there. But last summer, I don't know what it was. I like didn't cry, and I felt
Mm.
so guilty because all of my co-counselors were crying. But I think I was in like leadership mode where I was like, I've got to get this done, I've got to get that done. Like,
Mhm.
I can't focus on my emotions right now. And
Mhm.
then I remember the buses left, and I felt absolutely fine. Like, obviously, I was upset that the kids had left, but I'd also made plans to see my kids anyways
Yeah.
afterwards because I was going to be in Long Island for a while, so that kind of made me feel a little bit at ease. But the
Yeah.
buses left, and then we all stood round, and Andy done his big speech, and everyone was clapping, like,
Mhm.
and then everyone went to the bunks, and we were packing up, and I was fine. And then I think like 25 minutes into packing up, I think I like opened my backpack, and I just started sobbing, like literally. I could not stop crying out. There was snot. There, you know, when you're like, when you're like
Yeah.
hyperventilating, like that's what I was like, and I literally couldn't stop from that moment until I got on the bus and left camp. Bearing in mind, my bus got delayed, so I didn't leave camp until like 2 o'clock, and
Mm.
everybody else rushed to get on that first bus because they wanted to get obviously into New York. But like something
Yeah.
inside of me was like, I can't get on that first bus. Like, I need to do something. Then I walked around the whole of camp and just cried the whole time. Like, literally couldn't control my emotions. Like, Wendy came over and gave me a hug, and like she just knew there was nothing that she could say that was gonna make me stop crying. It was honestly so like, yeah, the first 2 summers I uncontrollably sobbed and like didn't want to leave everyone. And
Mhm.
then third summer it just hit me while I was packing up my stuff, and yeah, I felt guilty in a sense because the kids never saw that side. So to them they probably
Mhm.
thought, oh, she's so
It's not
cool.
sad. Yeah.
Like, she's happy to get rid of us. When in reality, when they left, I was like a snotty mess.
Do you know what? I think my first summer I cried so much. I think it was because it was like my first summer and I was like just overwhelmed by everything. Second summer, I cried more because I didn't know if I was going to be coming back for my third summer. And then third summer, so last year, I cried a lot, but I didn't cry as much because I knew I was going to be coming back again this year. Whereas this year, I don't know if I'll be able to go back next year. So it's going to be a whole thing again. We'll see. We'll see. But it's like obviously so hard to leave the kids, but then you've also got that kind of like post camp slump when you get home. Like, although camp ends, like when you staff and obviously you travel, international staff especially, and you're traveling after, like it's so nice. You're still with all your friends. You like you've got so much going on. You're seeing all these places. It's like not until you really fly home and you in your own room again, and you're like, oh, it's nice to be in my own bed. And then you're like, wait, like I'm used to being in a room with 20 other people, then like five other people traveling, and now I'm like by myself. And then you're like, oh well, I'm not going to be getting up and going and like exploring Las Vegas anymore, just like casually. And I'm not going to be able to have like Raising Cane's whenever I want it. And I've not just got all my besties like sat next to me who I can chat to. Like it just hits you like boom. So be prepared for the post camp slump, definitely.
And I think when you get home, like, you feel so guilty because you it's not that you're not happy to be home, but
Hmm.
nobody understands the feeling that you feel that
Hmm.
goes through your body unless they've been to camp themselves.
Hmm.
And I think naturally, like, the people around you start to think like, well, like they'd rather just not be here. But
Hmm.
that's not the case at all. It's just that you don't quite understand the feelings that we feel. So make sure you stay in contact with your camp friends and you speak to each other. Like, a big thing for me last summer was I travelled with a group of first timers for a week, and they arrived home and they really struggled. But
Yeah.
fortunately, I'd been through it for 3 years, so I kind of knew like what to say and how to help them.
Hmm.
But they never expected to feel the way that they did because at the end of traveling, they were excited to go home. They were a little bit fed up, but as
Hmm.
soon as they actually like sat down back home, they were kind of like, I would do nothing more than try and be back where I was yesterday.
Mhm.
So it is hard when you come home because others people don't understand, but you have to rely on your camp friends and speak out because it's not just holiday blues. It's like it's a
Mhm.
different level.
And like that, like obviously guilt that you're talking about is just like a whole other thing in itself. And I mean, I know you were saying about obviously you're excited, you're coming back to see your friends and family, but then like I always find it hard because people ask like, "Oh, did you have a good time? What did you do?" But I feel like most people that ask aren't actually that interested in it. They're just asking because they know you've been and done it. My mom, bless her, she gets super invested. I feel like I could tell her a million different things and she'll listen to every single bit. Whereas like sometimes I feel like I'm just my friends will ask and I'll be like, "Oh yeah, it was great. I did this, did that." But then I'm like, I feel guilty because I'm like, oh, I did like all this amazing stuff, and I don't want it to feel like I'm like rubbing it in. And it's not a case of rubbing it in anyone's faces because obviously people could do that if they wanted to do it. Lots of people choose not to do it. It's just like a really weird like feeling. And I don't really think this gets talked about very much at all. People will talk about like adjusting to food and like they're having down days, but like the like kind of traveler's guilt. Like I feel guilty going to camp, but I feel lucky because I'm in a position where I can go to camp, but then I feel guilty because I'm like just like leaving everybody at home behind for 3 months of the year to, and then when I come back all I want to do is talk about going again next year. And then they're like, well, do you actually really enjoy being at home? Did you actually miss us? Which I did, I obviously do, but then it's just like so it's so hard to explain, isn't it?
I think you've summed it up like absolutely perfect.
Mhm.
And I think the thing that people back home just get on with their life for 3 months and like
Mhm.
almost you the second you step foot on that plane, your home life is paused
Yeah.
and you come back and you press play again and it's kind of like naturally when you're in the camp bubble and you're with your friends and you're traveling and stuff, you don't necessarily speak to your friends back home as often as what you do. More so, choice is the wrong word, but like, you just get caught up in everything that's going on around
Mhm.
you. You don't necessarily think as much, and then when you get back home and you press play again, it's
Mhm.
almost kind of like life's went on.
Mhm.
Life
And
hasn't
you've
just
just not
stopped for
been there.
your time away, and yeah, you haven't been there for it. And sometimes I've found it hard to pick back up friendships when I've came home because
Mhm.
all I want to do is talk about camping. All I feel is the blues from leaving camping, leaving
Mhm.
traveling, and leaving that lifestyle. It is it's like we live two different lives.
It's Hannah Montana.
Yeah, and when you come home, you've got the guilt of missing being away, and then the guilt of kind of not abandoning your friends and family, but kind of focusing on what's going on around you back there. But that's all the people back home want you to do, anyways.
Mhm.
But I think we live a lot more and feel a lot more guilt than people back home actually realise we do.
Yeah. Because like you are having an amazing time, but then there's always that thing in the back of your mind. I'm like, oh my God, like it's if you get like an hour off, let's say, like you get a period off, and you've got like, I want to speak to my mom, I want to speak to my dad, I want to speak to my sister, I want to speak to my boyfriend, I want to speak to my friends. There physically isn't enough time for you to sit and have like good conversations with everyone. And like I find that really hard. Like and then I'll be like, oh well, one day I'll call my mom, one day I'll call my dad. But then you've also got the time difference as well. So like it does make it quite hard. So yeah, we're just big guilt-ridden people. Like it's ridiculous. It's so hard because you're having like such an amazing time, but then always at the back of your mind, you're like, I feel guilty, like I've just left everyone at home and just like upped and left. And another part of that as well is like, obviously I said I'm very lucky that I'm in a position to be able to do that. Obviously I'm living at home still. A lot of people wouldn't just be able to do that. Like some friends my age because, they're paying rent. I mean, my first 2 summers I was paying rent because I was living out. I've just moved back home now. So like I have had to deal with that. But then also like jobs as well. Do you know what I mean? Like one of like my best friend, we were meant to go in 2020. We were both going to go to different camps. And then obviously by the time it got delayed because of COVID and it was 2022, we'd both graduated uni. She did a teaching course and then she had to go right into being a teacher. So she never has been able to have the chance to go to camp and like do it, whereas I've just honestly pressed the delay button on doing anything degree related. um and I like, obviously I'm very lucky that my job will let me go away and come back. I'm not going to be able to do it forever, which is something that I realise. But yeah, not everyone's in this position, so I do feel very lucky that I can do it still.
I think job stability as well is such a big thing. And the hard truth is you have to, like I said, put your life on hold, but also at the same time, a lot of long-term career pathways won't allow you to do it every single year. Some might let you go
Mhm.
off once, some might not let you go off at all. I've had experience where I've had a brilliant job and it seemed crazy to leave it, but the
Mhm.
right thing to do was to leave it because I know that camp is what was the best thing for me at
Mhm.
the time, and like never looked back, and I had an amazing summer. But I think also a big stress factor for me, like, and the hard truth is that if I want to keep going back to campus, I have to keep leaving jobs, which means I can't get a job that is gonna start a career back home. And I didn't go to
Mhm.
university, I didn't get a degree, so it's kind of like I've already put myself on the back step of
Mhm.
being able to find that. But I think like what makes you happy you have to do, and if you know your time isn't up yet going to camp, then there's different ways to go about working and job stability. For example, I agency
Mhm.
temp now, been very fortunate enough that I fell into one job and it'll keep me there until May.
Mhm.
So it has been consistent for me, but job stability is a big stress factor when I leave camp.
Mhm.
And I'm like, okay, well, now I've got 4 weeks to travel and then I'm going home and then I've got to find a job. And then you're on such highs while you're traveling, and like life's just like a
Mhm.
movie. And then you get back home and then you're like, right, now I have to actually go back into a 9 to 5 job that's actually going to
Mhm.
allow me money to let me go back there again the next year. And it does get difficult. But
Yeah.
I think job stability, the hard truth about it is unless you can find a place of work that's going to let you keep leaving, which is very rare,
Mhm.
then it's something you have to sacrifice until you know your time's up at camp.
Yeah. And that's the hard part, isn't it? Like knowing when your time's up. Like obviously I'll be going back at the ripe old age of 25 this year. If I want to go back next year, I'll be 26. And like I know that that's not old, but like you were saying, in the grand scheme of life and like having a career and stuff, like I would keep going back to camp and forever. That's the mindset I'm in right now, if I could. But like deep down, I know that that's not possible. And I do feel like I had a few summers robbed. Well, I did have a few summers robbed because of COVID and I couldn't go. So now I feel like I'm just trying to make up for those summers that I couldn't go because of COVID. Because, this year would have been my fifth year. And it's, no, would have been my sixth year? Oh my God, wait, 2020, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25. It would have been my sixth year this year. I would have already had my 5 year hoodie. And like, I just feel like I've been robbed by COVID. But then yeah, like you're saying, like all my friends around me are in like career jobs and like they have houses and they're getting married and well, like different things like that, and you're like, oh God, I'm gonna have to do it eventually, aren't I?
But you can guarantee that they kind of feel like, oh, when you're away, they wish they could do it.
They
They
could
they
do it.
wish they'd bit the bullet and done it when they could.
Hmm.
But basically, like all the hard truths that we've kind of went through, it's not to scare you off, and it's not to make you want to be like second guessing as to if you've made the right decision. Like these are hard truths that we've dealt with for the past 3 years, going into our fourth summer,
Hmm.
and look how positive and how much we love camp. And you know you've got to look at things in certain ways, and bad things happen in life, but if you try and see the positive in situations, then you can get through these hard truths that we went through. And you know for example, visiting day is hard, but then just look how happy your kids are. And like
Hmm.
honestly, while you're at camp, all you care about is your kids' happiness.
Yeah.
So your homesickness, your feelings aren't invalid, but you know you'll still see the light of it
Yeah.
because of how happy your kids are. So you've just got to try and kind of see the positives in the hard truths that we've went through.
Yeah. I feel like that ended up like a therapy session by the
I actually feel
end.
like we have just had a therapy session.
So if anybody else is listening and you feel that camp guilt, like it feels like a weight off my shoulder speaking about it. Hopefully, like listening to this as well, like you'll realize if you are feeling like that, you're not the only one, and everybody's in the same boat. I just think people don't really speak about it. And if you're any friends or family from home listening, I love you all. We love you. We just love going away every summer, but we still love you all.
Thanks for supporting us as well. That's a big thing.
Yes, that is a big thing, definitely.
Okay, well, I think that kind of rounds up the video, doesn't it?
Mhm.
I think this podcast has been a therapy session. It's been enlightening, but we've really enjoyed doing this episode, and we'll see you in the next one.